I'm Rob Cartwright.
And I'm Amy Cartwright.
And we are Independence Brewing Company in Austin, Texas.
And you're watching the Beer Diaries.
Rolling fast down I-35 through the day and past the night.
Hey folks, Greg Zeschuk here from the Beer Diaries. I'm here at Independence Brewing with Rob Cartwright, one of the founders. Founded it with Amy Cartwright, his wife. Probably be talking to her later, but thanks for having us here.
Absolutely, welcome to the brewery.
Yeah, and you guys are one of the mainstays of the Austin scene. How long have you been around for?
We've been open 8 years. Austin beer scene has changed a lot since we opened up.
What was it like when you started 8 years ago? What was it like? I mean, it was a bit of a leap of faith for you guys, or?
Sure, yeah. Austin originally had kind of a big boom in the '90s of breweries, and then there was, I'm kind of reluctant to use the word flush out, but there was kind of like a downturn in the business cycle, and not everybody made it through.
Right.
And so we were kind of coming in after nobody had opened for like 7 years in Texas. So
a lot of people
are like, "Are you crazy?"
That's what I say. People are thinking like, "Hey, you guys, this. There's no chance."
Everybody said we were crazy.
That's usually a good idea to do something. Like that's one of, if everyone's telling you like not to, then you got to really think about it because you don't want to.
As an accountant, it was a historic low point on the barriers to entering the market.
And I think the other side of it is like sort of there's a maverick quality to a lot of brewers as well, aren't there?
Yeah. None of us open a brewery because we think we make the second best beer in the world.
Well, there you go.
So we are.
Cool.
Yeah, we kind of are what we are.
And so you've been brewing for the whole. Were you brewing prior to?
Yeah, I brewed at Copper Tank beforehand.
Okay, so that's one of the earlier ones.
1994. Yeah.
So in terms of the brewery here, we're right now we're sitting obviously in the tap room is kind of the front of the brewery. We got the artwork from the bootlegger.
Sure, you can hear the bottler going in the background.
Depends how good our sound guy is. We may or may not hear. I'm sure we'll hear something. Hey, we do these shows from an active brewery, and there's always stuff going on in them. So tell me a bit about just imagine walking through the space. Like what's right behind you? What's the sort of setup like?
Well, so behind the mural is actually the wall of our lab where we grow up and test we grow up our yeast and we test to make sure that the yeast is in a good, viable state. Do a little quality control as well, like quality assurance in there, make sure the beer is what we want to be putting out. When we first opened, the tasting room was just a tasting room, and we never stored anything else in it. But as you can see, the camera doesn't catch it, but we're surrounded by
boxes,
pallets of bottles and boxes and kegs.
Well, because right behind us here is the door in and out, so it's like this is where all the action is.
And we've grown. The truth is, since we opened, the Austin market has just taken off. Texas was a little late to the game of craft beer. But we're Texans. We don't like being behind in anything, so we're catching up real fast.
No, it's been pretty impressive. It's still I think we're still in this kind of brewery opening every quarter kind of phase. Like every 3 or 4 years.
Austin's had a really good scene for over 15 years now. So, in a way, when you go travel, I've learned when I travel to say I'm from Austin, and I get a lot different reaction than if I say I'm from Texas. It's like if I go to Portland or if I go to Boulder and say, hey man, I'm from Austin, like, man, you guys got a killer beer scene down there.
Right. So one thing that's interesting about you guys is you're still brewing some of the beers you started with. Your lineup, your core lineup is very similar.
It hasn't changed very much. You could say that, and then of course in some ways it's changed a lot. When we first started, it was just Bootlegger Brown, which is kind of like our lead beer, which is the mural behind us. Independence Pale, which is our flagship beer, which was my wife's favorite beer. So kind of like I like to say that was the beer that I convinced my wife to let me open a brewery with.
Oh, there you go.
And then Freestyle Wheat, which was my favorite beer.
Okay, got it.
Which was like an American-style filtered wheat/blonde ale.
Right. When did the Austin Amber? Because for me, especially because of the label, it's very iconic.
It's our best-selling beer too. So it's
when did you start making that? How long was that?
So the guys from the Alamo Draft House came by, after we were probably in our first year and a half of being open, and they were looking for a beer that was easy drinking, that they could have kind of as a house beer.
Got to go well with food as well, like kind of a...
Right. Yeah, middle of the road, like a real middle of the road kind of beer that it could appeal to everybody.
Yeah.
And they were interested in using our pale ale, but we didn't want to change the name or rebrand our pale ale, and they wanted something that could, you can't really private label in Texas, but you can get kind of close. You know, like their name is Alamo Draft House Cinema. It's like, so we made Draft House Amber. And I mean, when we started, we were like, I'm not gonna make an amber. You know, just what the world needs, another amber. You know?
What style amber is? Is it Vienna lager? Or what do they do? What kind of stuff?
It's American style amber ale.
Cool.
It's nothing really too crazy about it.
Okay, because some guys will they can do a Vienna lager, call an amber.
I was not a huge fan of amber, so it took me a while to come to a recipe that I actually liked.
Got it.
Now it's my favorite beer.
I think somehow my random talkings interrupted you. We got on our mental trip just to the lab, and somehow we got off track when we were thinking about the brewery.
It's like kind of going around the brewery.
I'm all over the place, so as the viewers will
behind
realize.
the lab is the brew house, which is where all the beer is actually made.
Right.
We had our fermenters are all back there too. When we first moved in, none of the tanks you can actually see if you go look were visible.
We'll walk around and do that.
We had a very small system in here, and it was very open.
Because the space now feels
it's filled in.
Well,
completely.
I mean that's again that's the story of like the growth, right? Like I mean you guys have grown a heck of a lot.
The pie in Texas is growing so fast. That's also created like a really great effect in Texas where we've got a real brotherhood of breweries.
Yeah, the Brewers Guild is
pretty tightly together.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of folks. I mean, it's interesting too because you guys, a lot of you have crossed paths. Like you'll brew with some of the guys that are still in town, like at other places and stuff like that.
Well, so I used to be the head brewer at Copper Tank.
Yeah.
Tim, who's the brewer at Real Ale, used to be the head brewer at Bitter End. So we've all had a previous job. And we all knew each other from the previous job. So
that's cool.
We've all known each other a long time.
So one thing about I was talking to you guys a little earlier about the brew house. 14, 15 barrel. 14. But I mean, you have.
It's a weird size.
Yeah, but you're also like 60 barrel fermenter. So you're doing like multiple batches, multiple per day.
Yeah, quadruple batches, which is not that uncommon for breweries as you start to get to where you're like cranking out production.
Yeah.
Our brewing system was made for a brew pub.
Yeah.
It was originally the Coyote Springs Brewery out of Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, okay.
That went out of business in 1998.
And you're able to secure that?
We picked that system up on the used equipment market, which was awesome. It was designed to make beer once a day, maybe not even every day. And we've definitely...
You put it through the paces and
we brew on it 3 times a day, almost 7 days a week.
And how many, what's the yearly, how many barrels of beer are you guys
we'll do about 7,500 barrels this year in 2012.
That's a lot. That's great. Has it been growing? Like, has that been kind of going up nicely for you guys?
The last 2 years, it's been growing almost about 75% a year.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. And obviously, I mean, you're selling probably every drop you make. Like, how far are you outside Texas or throughout Texas? Or where'd you get
we're
to?
just in Austin, San Antonio, and Houston.
So really
Houston is like on this crazy beer rationing program where they're literally being starved of beer.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think you guys, you're also looking at expanding as well, I think, as well.
Yeah, we're bringing in a 60-barrel brew house right now, made by JV Northwest, which is kind of like the premier American brew house manufacturer.
Something sweet. That'll be a real big change for you.
Big technological leap because the brew house we've got is 22 years old, and back then American craft beer was a whole different beast.
Yeah.
Like we make stout on this system, I can only make 7 barrels. I can't make 14 because the mash tun. Nobody drank 9% beer in 1990.
So you mean
no one
like
drank 9%
the capacity
beer.
for grain?
It's not big enough. The mash tun is just undersized for the kettle.
That's pretty hilarious actually.
So what we do is and we're doing it right now.
Yeah.
We make 2 mashes and run them both off consecutively into the kettle and then boil the kettle once.
Okay. I also saw that today you guys are also bottling, and so you got a bottling. Are you expanding that at all, or are you keeping that as is?
We have a little 4-head Maheen bottler, which is kind of an entry-level bottler.
And the guys are cranking. I saw them cranking all day, like bottling away.
It is the bottleneck. No pun intended. It is the bottleneck for the system, though.
Yeah.
I think that's where that word came from. We are looking at picking up a rotary head bottler. One way or another, we'll have a rotary head bottler in 6 months.
You also do a lot of draft. I mean, I have you beer on draft around town a lot.
Half our volume is draft.
So half draft, half bottles. In terms of beers themselves, like one thing that's interesting. I mean, you guys obviously have been doing it for a little while, but the Illuminati. So we have the main
We've
beers.
only gotten to the first 4 so far.
Right, and then we also have seasonals. I mean, on the end there is one of your seasonals. So you have a number of yearly seasonals you do. They typically come back year to year.
Well, so this is Jasperilla, and so early on, even in 2005, we decided we were going to make a once a year beer, and basically a vintage brew.
Yeah.
We have a border collie that we've owned since, that's been with us since before we started the brewery.
Long time.
And so me and him he was my companion here while I kind of built the brewery.
Oh, okay.
And he was kind of like the third member of the team. And so that's Jasper, and he's on the label. He was so cool that we decided he needed to have a beer of his own. Well, so this is like a English-style old ale or strong ale, but it's made with a kind of American brewing philosophy.
Right. So a little more hoppier?
Cleaner, American Chico yeast. Okay. It's not really hoppier. The style is not a hoppy style, so it's almost like, I like to say it's almost like red licorice flavor.
Cool. Oh, nice.
Real fruity, but all those fruity flavors come from high alcohol fermentation of the American ale yeast.
Right. And so the seasonals, then the Illuminati, like what
first, after we did Jasperilla, the first 2 beers we made after that were Stash and Convict Hill Oatmeal.
Oh, yeah, seasonals. So that's how those came.
They were. We knew we needed to. Craft beer was just changing. We had been open for about 4 years.
Yeah.
And the pale ale was a nice hoppy pale ale.
Yeah, it's really nice hop forward.
IPAs were, they were around, but they weren't really taking over yet.
Yeah,
and it's like they were really starting to take over.
Yeah.
And we just needed to lift the bar on the artistic quality of the beers. We started with the idea of getting a foothold in HEB, getting the cases established and really building a foundation. So it was an opportunity to really come out with like, okay, well let's push the bar. Let's make another level and let's really push the artistic quality. Right, so we came out with Stash and we came out with Convict Hill Oatmeal Stout.
Right.
Which Oatmeal Stout was always that was like the style of beer that got me brewing in the first place.
So what's about like Oatmeal Stout versus regular Stout? Like why do you like that one comparatively? Maybe
the oats contribute a significant creaminess to the beer. I think stouts without that extra creamy quality just kind of end up being, they can often be kind of hollow. They don't have the body to really back up the roasty character.
Right.
It's kind of like drinking black coffee. I'm from Canada. I have an English heritage.
Hey, there you go.
So I drink my coffee with milk and sugar.
Oh, really?
So that probably tells you how I like
I'm from
my
Canada.
stouts.
I drink it black. But well, it's interesting too. I mean, obviously, even like, do you ever put it on nitro? Have you ever done?
Oh yeah. We have tried that.
Does it over cream it? Like, does it kind of get too creamy in that case? You think, or what?
It hasn't. We haven't really done that very much. I think only a couple of people have actually put on nitro, and we haven't carbonated it with nitrogen, so it doesn't really get the full effect.
Right.
It doesn't need it.
Yeah, no, actually.
We'll pour it here in a minute, and you get the full cascade
I've
effect.
I've had it. It's really robust. I mean, it's interesting because what's the ABV on that? It's like
it's kind of changed over the years. We have a challenge keeping the ABV up because of the size of our system.
Oh yeah.
It's at least 8.5.
Right.
We like it to be a little higher, like up to 9.5.
Wow.
But sometimes we can't quite always keep it there.
Which other than your beers, what are some of your favorites from locals? What other breweries? I mean, it's funny because I think we're not that far. I mean, South Austin 512 are both
there's
pretty close,
definitely a Southside brewing community down here now.
What are the ones you like to drink the most that aren't yours?
Again, I've been drinking beer obviously for a long time
now.
When we were opening the brewery, it's an out-of-state brewery that used to be, we used to call it Old Reliable. We have a recycling bin full of Sierra Nevada Pale Ale bottles every Monday.
Yeah.
So, one of the reasons...
That's a classic.
We had to get the brewery open simply because we couldn't afford to keep buying a 6-pack or 2 6-packs of Sierra Nevada.
That's why. Is that what you did with the Pale Ale first? Like, I mean, you were like, okay, you're doing a Pale Ale.
We went in a different direction. Theirs is a lot more earthy. And
I think yours is
balance. It's like we chose a much more citrusy, kind of bright.
Yeah, I really like the Independence Pale. Like, it's really, I think it's really tasty. Very very hop forward, but still, it's still pale, right?
But from the other guys, I would say the brew pub beers are often really good. I've often enjoyed going up to North By. But I have ulterior motives. The guy that owns North By is the guy that used to own Copper Tank and hired me as a professional brewer the first time.
Well, that's cool.
So there's a little bit of loyalty there, yeah.
And they have good food there too.
And they have really good food. And they opened up a new place down. It's similar ownership called Red's Porch on South Lamar.
Oh, cool.
And they have, if there's a good Austin craft beer, they've got it on tap.
Oh, nice.
Which is really nice. You can go in and kind of see what everybody else is putting out. So.
Well, it's interesting because like what you find, especially even the places that have like place less than bangers with 100 taps, probably half are Austin beers, I think. Like, It's a really impressive showing when you can actually fill that many taps with really good quality beers. I mean, there's samplings from everyone, and there's also all styles are represented too. Like, that's the other thing that is very impressive about the
We like
market.
to play around, yeah.
That's sure. Like I mean, there's guys like that do like sours, farmhouse ales, and then you have super clean lagers.
You got like the Jester King guys who are definitely doing the more farmhouse style, so they can. And you're getting to see like people going into all the different niches of craft beer and really producing, like you said, like there are a lot of diversity.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely, I think we're going to get Amy out here now.
Yes, we will. And so Amy's going to talk about some of the stuff you talked about, some other things, and I think another fellow we're going to talk about the beers. This is going to be we're just beginning. This is the beginning of an amazing show.
It's going to get Amy out because she's the real brains. She is the brains of the outfit.
So cheers. Sure. Salut, Ollie Slant, we have all kinds of sayings here at the Beer Diaries. Na zdrowie, Prost, many of them, so thank you. Hey folks, Greg Zeschuk from the Beer Diaries. I'm back now with Amy Cartwright, one of the co-founders here at Independence Brewing. And in fact, her and Rob have had a busy day today because you guys are trading Baby back and forth. Baby's watching from off camera. She's cheering you on. So thanks. Really appreciate it. You being on the show. We had a great chat with Rob about a lot of the stuff. But we'll have to go talk a little bit with you a bit more about the really early days. Just what was it like? I mean, again, 8 years ago, pretty unique here in Austin. There's only a couple of breweries going at the time. What was that like?
Well, some of the things that were funny, I guess, when we were first getting started were, people really hadn't heard of a brewery trying to start up in town. Pretty much the accounts that we would try to, get our beer on tap at had, if they were interested in this style beer, they would most often already have Live Oak or Real Ale on tap. So typical reaction was, Independence, never heard of you.
They're not looking to expand their horizons. They feel it's covered already.
Yeah, and they would say, I already have Live Oak. Why would I need another Austin brewery? So that was the first challenge to get over. But essentially, we relied on the differences of our beer lineup. We introduced Bootlegger, which nobody really had, such a kind of dark chocolatey brown ale. So that really satisfied its own unique niche. And but in the early days, because we were draft only, I pretty much would load up pony kegs in the back of my Honda and ice them down, and I had a pump top. So the trick was, I take some, buckets around with me and, pump a little bit out and say, come out to my car and try my beer, and it was
that's hilarious.
A funny reaction, wandering into the account with some pitchers and cups. So that was one of the unique challenges of trying to get people to try the beer.
You really had to hustle. Like you had to hustle, you had to make it. Well,
essentially, I was the salesperson and delivery force.
Right.
Rob was in the brewery brewing the beer, and I was out basically doing sales, distribution, and kind of running the office. So essentially, in the early days, you're just trying to, the first 3 tap accounts, you're like, all right, and then once you get to 10, you're like, okay.
What was the first?
So
tap?
Dog and Duck Pub, Nasties, believe it or not, because of the roller derby connection, and then Little Woodrow's.
Oh, cool.
And then shortly after, we got into Opal Divines.
So started getting people.
Draft House.
Right. And how did it kind of sort of get to where it is today? Like, I mean, it's been years now, and I mean, you've done some. I mean, you've become quite. Again, one of the very prominent breweries here in Austin, well established.
2 years was really just a lot of effort trying to get win taps at local bars because we were, even though we'd purchased the bottling line, we hadn't really mastered it by any stretch of the means.
Yeah.
And but basically in around July 2005, we released our first 6-packs, and so that was a whole new challenge, aside from trying to, win placements at bars. Now we had to try and win placements at grocery stores.
Right, yeah, and I think that's probably, their head offices are probably elsewhere.
Yeah.
Does the local guy control it?
Our first 6-pack sales were at the Whip-In, Wheatsville Co-op, and then some Twin Liquors.
Oh, cool.
And then it really kind of blew up for us when we got into Central Market. That was, Central Market and Whole Foods were like our first real grocery stores.
Right.
And the interesting thing was our Central Market in our neighborhood just kept buying up everything that we could bottle. They were, as fast as we could bottle it, they were basically.
Which is a wonderful problem to have. Just to be,
I think they just knew that they could lock them. They could be exclusive if they just kept buying everything we could make.
But then the great thing is then they sell it and then they buy more, and you're like, this is a great. Hey, that's awesome.
But essentially, spend a lot of time sampling beer to people at grocery stores. Sometimes you cruise the aisles and you see people handing out wine, I spent so many weekends in HEB handing out 2-ounce samples of our beer and talking to people, and they would always think that you were like hired by the store, that you work for HEB or Whole Foods, and you're like, no, we brewed this beer.
Here in Austin. And now, I mean, what are your main things you're doing now? Like you, obviously, I think a lot of the marketing is probably in charge of the sales, but in charge of, I mean, managing like,
in
the business
2010,
as well?
at the end of 2010, we signed our first distribution agreement.
Oh, because you distribute yourselves prior?
Right.
Oh, wow.
And so, a lot of, you think that, and some people might think that means you don't have to worry about anything anymore, but actually that's not the case. We spend a lot of time still interacting with our customers and trying to set up special events and cask tappings and special release parties and things like that.
And you guys do tastings once a month here, is that right?
We do. First Saturday of every month. We've done it since we started. We now get between 400 and 500 people show up at our door on first Saturday. It's really fun. As we are venturing into expanding the brewery, so once that process is complete and we can utilize our tasting room for tasting again, we'll probably do some other style of event on a weekly basis, but first Saturday is what it is. It's a big, it's like a neighborhood block party or a tailgate with no sporting event.
Do you have a lot of repeat people come back? Like,
there's always new people based on how the interest in the tours, but people, I think, spread the word and tell you, like, make sure to bring a folding chair, and you can bring in food if you want.
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
Sometimes people bring like little games like frisbees
So a sort of party atmosphere kind of thing. That's really cool.
We like to throw a party.
And you do naming and labels and all the stuff, like you're in charge of naming the beers.
The names of the beers are so much fun to come up with. I mean, it's a big process.
What are some of your most memorable?
Well, when we actually Stash IPA was really hard to name because we kept saying the brewer's secret stash. It's like it's ours, like we're hoarding it, and we kept having this idea of like when you go to a party and you have your own like hidden cooler and things like that. But eventually we realized that let's just drop the words brewer's secret,
It's called Stash.
And then it was like, once we kept saying it, we're like, yes.
That's cool.
Victory,
and then you see when it succeeds in the public, that's even probably more.
Yeah.
More
exciting. With Convict Hill, it had more to do with I'm just into history and Austin history in particular. And when we moved down to the area where Convict Hill Road is, I just became very fascinated with the history of that street and why it got its name. And essentially, they had a little quarry there where they harvested limestone, and it's actually, they used some of that for the inside of the Capitol building. Oh, okay. And since we had Bootlegger with the Capitol building in the background, it was kind of like, you don't wind up on Convict Hill. You might be like pouring out limestone.
It's all tied together in some way.
Yeah,
that's cool. So what do you see for the future? Like looking down the road a little bit, your guys' business, how it's been evolving. Obviously, you're going to expand the brewery. How big can it get? Like I mean,
really just want us to be able to finally get to some other cities. I feel like for the last 4 years I've been telling the poor people up in Dallas Fort Worth, like, just wait, someday we'll get our beer. So like the first stage really with expanding is just to be able to take it to some other good Texas cities and
even other states. You never know. I mean, who
maybe
knows,
eventually,
right?
But I mean, one of the things that's been so cool in Austin is you just get to know all the other business owners, local farmers and other local artisan producers. And I know in Houston there's bound to be like a trove of people like that we haven't met yet. Right. Same with Dallas Fort Worth and San Antonio.
But it's probably also within, if you think of the state of Texas, I think Rob was kind of talking about this a little earlier, like, the population's not that dissimilar from that of an entire country like Canada. And I'd say Texas there's some bright spots. I mean, obviously, St. Arnold and Deep Elm and a few others that are starting up in Dallas and that, St. Arnold and Houston. But it's not that well served for beer. Like there's like Spotswood covers a lot of it with the Shiner stuff, but like it's still like there's not that much Texas beer, and there's lots of people. Yeah, people.
I think Texans will embrace Texas craft beer, and so one of our goals is just to get beyond Austin city limits, so to speak. They're actually, we do get a lot of requests from people outside of the area, out of state, but most of those people are people who've moved from Austin to another city, and they're like, please, it's just, there's so much, we're just now like getting to be pretty good at, distributing our beer within the area that we've been in for 8 years. The idea of trying to go out of state is like a whole new challenge.
So, this has been great. Really appreciate chatting with you and learning a bit about the brewery. And it's exciting. You guys are, like I said, an Austin sort of staple, and it's exciting to see where you guys are going, and just wonderful to have a chance to chat with you. Cheers. Hey folks, Greg Zeschuk here once again at the Beer Diaries, talking to David Hinkle, the operation managers here at Independence Brewing. We are going to look at beers, which we've lovingly poured. But before we do that, ask you a couple of kind of just questions. So how'd you get into here at Independence? What's your background? How'd you get here?
Well, I came by way of Mississippi.
Yeah.
I graduated in mechanical engineering
from
Ole Miss.
Yeah.
And then obviously before I moved here, I had a deep love for the city of Austin.
Yeah.
So came here under the idea that I was going to find work and the land of plenty here in Central Texas. After a choppy road, I found my way into Independence Brewing Company by way of one of my best friends.
Of course, one of the cool things is you actually get to drink beer at your job from time to time.
Sure.
And which we're going to do momentarily.
All right.
But first question, music. One thing that's really interesting, and obviously right now it's silent here in the brewery except for the bottling going on. Typically, any brewery we come to, the music's just cranking. It's really interesting. And we've discovered there's a certain set list, or some sort of different types of music that people like. How about here? Who picks it? How's it work? Is it democratic or?
Well, it starts. It's very democratic.
Yeah.
But it starts with the cellar guys come in first, so they're in about 6 a.m. and depending on who starts the day, as to their particular taste, as we talked about earlier, one of our morning cellar guys, Oscar.
Yeah.
He's a huge fan of metal.
Yeah.
So. That 2 or 3 days a week you're coming in to the rising sun of metal, which is good. But everybody, I would say, with the exception of myself, every employee plays in a band.
Oh, really?
Here in town.
Wow.
Yeah, virtually.
So what's taking you so long?
Some more than one. Well, it's not that I was raised in a musical family, and it's more of a career, family.
Yeah. Well, there's only so much time in the day, right? It sounds like, running a busy operation like this one is pretty serious work, I'm expecting, too, a lot going on.
Absolutely. But a lot of the other employees, they're in very successful bands.
That's great.
And that's another good thing about kind of our family here is because you will find time or pick up the slack because everybody has shows. They do tours, or they're going to leave the country, and that's something that's ultimately accepted here.
Yeah, that's really cool. So everyone kind of pitches in together to kind of help out and do what needs to get done.
Absolutely, because being invested in your musical life is an extension of being invested in here. It's creative and it's nurturing as it was. So, if people can be happy elsewhere, happy away from the brewery, then they're ultimately going to be more happy here. So that's the way we see it.
Cool. Let's talk a little bit about the beers. These are. It's interesting because when you pour them all out, this is your main. We got your main selection here. We have the Jasperilla, which is a seasonal, but we didn't pour that one. It's a special bottle probably.
Right.
That's cool. What we have is it's just such a wonderful rainbow of beer colors. It's interesting. Is it sort of strategically that way, or is it just kind of like what you guys happen to be making now the most? That's sort of it is what it is.
Well, I believe the evolution of the beers here are. Obviously, the choices have to be strategic. It has to be.
It's a business too, right?
Based on market placement and people's taste, but we've tried to cover a pretty broad spectrum. Now, to be more adventurous and to be more exciting, that's where our Brew Illuminati comes in.
Right.
So, we'll do small batches, limited runs that kind of stretch the boundaries.
Cool stuff too. Some really interesting beers there too.
Absolutely, and those give us outlets as well. And to break away, I love all the beers, but it's nice that you always know there's something new coming down the pipeline to enjoy.
For sure. So to start, I think one thing I always think about is the order at which you would taste them, because if you got down towards this end, certainly with the IPA and the stout, it's gonna be real powerful flavors. I think probably among these two, I think Austin Amber would be probably the most even keeled kind of between the two? I mean, this one I'm expecting brown will be pretty malty. Like, what do you think? You'd start with the Austin Amber.
I would say so. Yeah. I would say so. That.
I see you picked the brown actually. I mean, behind there you got your glass with the brown in it. Is that your personal favorite? Of
the Bootlegger is my personal favorite. You know, we're winding the day down, and at the end of the day, it's always the Bootlegger that cool. Kind of calls to me.
And I think we learned earlier on the show that this is the like among the first batch that was brewed. Like, I mean, it's one of the first regular beers that you guys did.
Absolutely.
Like 8 years ago, right? This stood the test of time, right?
And everybody, you know, obviously that was the first staple.
Yeah.
And people who have followed independence through the whole 8 years.
I'm just going to taste it.
You just have to go for it.
I think if you do this in the amber, you can probably do either one first, I think, because they're probably pretty...
I would agree.
So,
cheers.
Yeah, cheers. So why do you like this one? What is it about this one that you like?
It's the body in this one, the drinkability. It's heavy.
It's still dry though, isn't it?
It is. But it's not too heavy. Sessionable.
Yep.
Roasty, but not overpowering.
Yeah, there's almost a little smoke in there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, and it's not too filling. It's good. Yeah. Good to have either with a meal or without.
Yeah, you absolutely feel like you could drink this one. Like, I mean, just like you said, like either way, it's probably very good with food. Very, very drinkable. It's got a little, not as sweet as like Belgian doubles, you know, like from a brown style, but definitely therefore a little more American style for sure.
A little more body than other browns, I find, but utterly enjoyable. And it's my personal favorite. And like I said, when I go home, I'm gonna have a Bootlegger.
Yeah, that's the only way to go. So I'll try the amber next. So what's this one actually? It's interesting. This one has an interesting story, which Amy and Rob both shared with us about the fact that it was, you know, a draft house cinema in-house beer, then turned into a regular. And I mean, for me, that's the thing. Like, I mean, I think always this one. Like, I don't know what it is, but the label just says Austin to me. Oh wait,
it actually does say Austin.
But it kind of does, though. You know, like I mean, despite of that, it's got a funny. Like, I mean, I guess maybe for me when I was coming here, this was the one that I kind of remember seeing. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, this is one of the main beers in town, actually.
It absolutely is. We carry the majority of draft accounts, I would say. It's our...
Oh, so it's the real common draft.
I would say for us, it's the most far-reaching draft account, most recognizable of our brand. The amber follows, which is very good, follows suit kind of with the way that we create our beers, and that it's a little hoppier, it's a little bolder.
But body's light and it's pretty dry, like no residual sugar. Like, it's interesting you mentioned the body on the Bootlegger, like having this afterward, like much lighter, like lighter on the palate. It doesn't you know, it's got those nice kind of toasty malt notes, but not roasted, smoky or anything like that.
It's not overpowering at all.
It's very kind of, it's even keel.
It's good to have
very nice,
by itself on its own, and you can move to other beers. It's not a palate wrecker.
Yeah, no, for sure. No,
it's very subtle.
Speaking of palate wrecking, we're moving into the world of IPAs, which, you know, not in a bad way, but I mean, the reality of IPAs are you know, typically they're pretty. The hops can be, obviously it's designed to be very hop heavy, and therefore, like, you know, back this way, it's very hard to go backward and drink them because of the hops. So, I mean, lovely golden color on this one. This is like and actually, another thing to point out to folks too is, I mean, the head retention on all these is actually, you're still sitting with a little bit of head here on the Convict Hill. I mean, we poured these 10, 15 minutes ago, and there's still a nice, like, you know, nice little head on that one. Like, this is like.
Did you get the one that we bottled today? Because we were just bottling the Convict Hill.
So that could be like the freshest possible. It might be today's actually.
I'm sure that is.
It probably is. But so let's start with but back to the stash. I mean, the stash, obviously in the very hop forward, but I think we talked about it earlier too. It's very layered though. You know, I get some of the pine, some of the tropical fruits, some of the citrus. Like, it's not excessively.
No, absolutely. It's not just the hop character that's gonna stick with you. A lot like our pale, our stash it's layered, but obviously aggressive.
Yeah.
And that's what anybody's gonna pull from the stash.
That's what you want in an IPA, right? You're drinking it to get kind of a. But no, it's really lovely. I get a lot. I mean, for me, probably the most, like, I definitely get the tropical fruit and the citrus with the resin, like the resinous type hops. Very strong. I mean, not overly bitter. You know, it's like it's still very drinkable. Like, I don't think it's not unidimensional. It's
absolutely it's sweet enough, but we don't want to be overly dry.
Yeah, the finish is. Yeah, and that's not too dry. I mean, you don't get. Sometimes you get like a lip smacking kind of, your mouth kind of feeling. So it's moist enough.
Have a couple more.
Well, maybe I will. It's probably probably my favorite one you guys make. I'll declare that. I declare it officially or unofficially at the end of the show, but the Convict Hill Oatmeal Stout. Then we talked with Rob a little about the oatmeal bringing out a creamier flavor and all the rest to it. It's really, I mean, I had this, it's funny, ironic, I had it on tap last night. It was really nice on tap too, and so it'd be interesting to try in a bottle today. But obviously for the big boys, you know, it's like I always put up the light, and if you're not seeing anything through this one.
Absolutely, and you know what I find with our bigger beers, our stout and our stash, that people who aren't necessarily as accustomed to drinking craft beer fall right in to line with drinking our bigger beers. That you know, and necessarily that you know, the bigger beers and the craft beers, they're not scary, and people have preconceived notions that, you know, there's something hard to drink about a stout.
This is
our caliber.
Super easy drinking. I mean, honestly, like really creamy. There's a bit of bitterness, but like, you know, not excessive. But then you get a really lovely residual sort of sweetness. I mean, it's weird. It's not as sweet as a milk stout, you know, where they have the lactose in it, obviously. But it's got definite sweetness in the finish that actually makes it, like, kind of counterbalances that bitterness and makes it very, very drinkable.
You know, and we try obviously not to over dry, because we want to have that residual sweetness. And we want it to stick with you.
Yeah, no, I think this is my favorite. I'll declare it right now. The Convict Hill is delicious. Oatmeal stout. I didn't realize it's like almost 9%, or in the 8 to 9 range, which is, you know, it's effectively. And the way you guys brew it, I heard about the fact that you have to do, like, you know, the boil. You have to do, like, mash in twice. Double mash in to get. Which is, I mean, that's love, you know, devotion for a beer like this. So it's nice.
It is.
This does taste like today's beer. So wow, very delicious.
And it's fun for us because we don't have to obviously go through the full clean process twice. So we can come in and we can have a stout day. And today was all stout. We did 2 stout brews, and we bottled
you guys been bottling away back there too. So yeah, cool. Now that's, I mean, you know, I recommend to folks also try the seasonals. I mean, I've had your Saison before, really great summer seasonal.
Saison, we're going to be kicking around revisiting a Belgian triple this year.
Cool.
We put a winter warmer in the tank this morning.
Nice.
That was
Is it a real spicy one? Lots of nutmeg and stuff, or how you guys do that?
No, it's going to be a natural winter warmer. We're going to let the grain and we're going to let the yeast shine through. We're not going to add any additional spices.
But I mean, anyway, so this has been wonderful. I mean, this is kind of capping our trip to here at Independence. It's been a really great visit. I mean, love the hospitality, love the beers.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Great to meet you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Na zdrowie. This is Greg Zeschuk from the Beer Diaries. Signing off. Thank you.